Welcome, everybody. I am your host, Chris Cox, and welcome to the Wild Ones podcast, where we celebrate those who work in love daily. And have I got a great guest for you? RJ Vega is a wonderful young man out of Lincoln. I really enjoy what he's doing for the community, what he's doing for himself, and I hope you are able to take a listen, find joy in what we talk about today, and find joy and passion and love in what motivates RJ. So, bringing to the podcast, first time ever on the show, RJ Vega, welcome.
Well, welcome, Chris, and thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Big fan of the Wild Ones, and I just love the conversations you've been having. Really appreciate the space to share some of my thoughts and also learn a few things from you.
Well, I will do my best to listen, to learn, to teach, and just overall have a great conversation because I think that's the biggest point of these shows, of these episodes, is I just want to have a conversation with people. I want people to learn of others who are really putting in that effort 100% in their community, whatever positivity or however they are positively affecting their community. And I kind of wanted to sit down and talk to you about that. And I do know that I knew that you work with in like get out the vote and voter registration. And I just want to ask, we'll jump into that and we'll kind of go into some backstory. But how is that important for people of color in the Midwest, in Lincoln, Nebraska, for instance? How important is that to understand their voting rights, to understand why it's important for them to vote, and to, I guess, switch the narrative that voting will change things and voting does matter?
Sure. Yeah. No, that's an excellent question, Chris. I mean, at the end of the day, what we're talking about is power. We're talking about decision making, and these representatives that we elect, whether or not you, as a community member in Lexington or Scottsbluff or Omaha or Lincoln or wherever, if you're not eligible to vote, those representatives still represent you. If you are eligible but you decide not to vote, those elected officials will still represent you. So voting is an important tool in the toolbox here to really try to get our voices, all of our voices, whether we're, persons of color, maybe we're somebody battling like poverty, battling health issues, so many things. The key about voting is that, if you can have a voice and you can get your community to stand up and share their voice, then hopefully you can nudge whoever's in power in the short term, but in the long term, you create a culture within your community that not only are we going to raise our voices when something is not going right, we'll give props when things are going well, but we're going to be active participants in the decision-making process. We're not just going to be told, this is how things are, you got to do things this way. We're going to be actively at that table having conversations, letting folks know what is happening in our communities, what needs to be done, what needs to be looked out for, because whether or not we participate, those decisions will still be made. That those who do have power will still make decisions. And then it's going to be important that we not only have that voice, but also we cultivate, especially among our younger generations that are watching everything that we do, cultivate that notion, that idea, that acceptance that, hey, even if I'm a kid from Kearney, Nebraska, I too can consider running for a public office. Whether it be something big like out in DC, Congress, or whatever. Maybe it's something local, which also, and I feel we don't talk about this long, as much as we should, but local offices, your school board, county sheriff, city council, make a lot of those decisions that impact us day to day. So it's kind of cultivating that culture that not only are we going to be bystanders in this decision making process, we're going to have a voice, and we, the younger generations, are going to one day be the ones making those decisions, having our hands on the levers of power. But that's really got to be a community movement, because it could be just a couple of us, and that's still important. but a lot of the conversations each of us has with our family, with our friends, that speaks volumes louder than maybe somebody who, drives out to your community and talks about voting for one day and then drives back somewhere else. It's us, our communities, our families having those conversations and knowing that, voting is not the only solution, but it's an important piece of a puzzle to really build that shared decision making.
Right. I mean, it has such an effect, positive and negative. And to again bring that awareness and that understanding is such a huge undertaking. And so we talked about this is where you are now. How did RJ, how did you get here? How did your path lead you to undertake to taking this, as part of your, I don't want to say cross to bear, but what led you to this to say, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to affect change in my community and I'm going all in. So tell us the story. Give us the backstory. We kind of started in media res. We started in the middle. So give us the backstory as how RJ got here.
You know, that's something that I often find myself reflecting on. Growing up, I didn't necessarily say, "Oh, when I grow up, I want to be a community organizer. Oh, I want to, work at a
Right.
nonprofit." Um, I think a lot of it does begin with my mom and her like just vast amounts of selflessness in that if somebody needed something, somebody needed help, somebody needed a meal, she wouldn't even think twice. She would, show up and help translate at the local Kmart when, families in need needed like winter jackets or whatever. She would, at a drop of a dime, just go and help whoever needed to be helped. So I think growing up, I would sometimes get mad and be like, "Oh, mom, why you doing that? Let's instead go somewhere else, go to the movies or something."
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I was older that I realized that, she was from the mindset of, one day that could be me, that could be my kids in need. So, help out whoever needs help because that's the right thing to do. That's the thing to do with integrity, with respect. So she's really the foundation of me making a decision to not necessarily dedicate my life to other ventures as much as something that's people focused, helping, that's the center of it, helping. Coming up through college, which in and of itself was quite it was a triumph to get there, let alone
Yes.
survive and make it through and then graduate college in 2008. Um, you know, that to me was a big accomplishment, but even so, it was so intimidating that maybe looking back on it now as a currently a 37-year-old, I really should have considered pushing myself in different ways. But all that helped expose me to nonprofits in general. I had a work study job as a student in college. So I worked at the admissions office as well. So I would go out with accompany an admissions counselor to high schools to visit and then share my story about going to college. And then my first professional job after college was at a nonprofit named Education Quest Foundation. So there I again would go out and talk to families, talk to students about not only the importance of college, but putting some of those pieces together. How do you apply for admission? How do you prepare for college? How do you find scholarships and grants and the money to help make your college goals, accessible to you? So I did that for about 10 years and I loved that work. But in about 2018, there was just a lot of the family separation and things at the border were really getting a lot of attention in the media. Um, and then, I just started to feel myself wanting to contribute in other areas outside of just education. So, so then 2020 happened, and again, on a more local level, right here in Nebraska, many meat processing plant workers during the onset of the pandemic were still in a very vulnerable place where they, were essentially told from up above to continue working. You got to work. You're an essential worker. But the questions were regarding what kinds of safety measures were being put in place, how quickly, and at the end of the day, it's it's that balance beam of they keep the work going, but there's vulnerabilities to this virus that we as a society don't fully understand yet, in 2020. So I saw a lot of that, and that was kind of the tipping point for me wanting to contribute in other areas outside of education, which I still love, anything regarding college access or getting people to find the next step after high school. But now with my current work, I work at a nonprofit named Nebraska Appleseed, and I'm able to contribute in areas including voter participation, so getting that community energy to participate in not only voting but also engaging with your elected officials, as well as talk about other issues like positive immigration laws, where many longtime community members could then, like DACA and Dreamers, could then get a next step to apply for lawful permanent residency and/or citizenship, as well as worker safety. So when you're working like in a meat packing plant or you're working in a construction zone, knowing your rights and knowing, what are some good ways to hopefully prolong your career in industries that sometimes can be very, very hard on the body. So a bit different work now. I've been doing this for about a year and a half. Love it, but um, again, if it has to do with community, even if I'm not the best resource, I would love to just connect others to whatever that resource is.
And I find that amazing. And I find this amazing. A lot of people that I've talked to or been blessed to talk to with this podcast is um, the the role that parents or the parental figure or a special adult in someone's life plays. Because what I've heard, which is kind of uniform through all these interviews, is my mom and dad made us, or not made us, my mom and dad, we had to hand out presents to other people before we opened our own presents. Or another guest said, well, my parents opened their doors to anyone that needed help and helped people out, and made sure if they needed a car fixed, they got it fixed and they didn't overcharge them. Or like you just said, anytime a service or something was needed that your mom felt she could help, she went down there and helped in any way she could. And the profound effect that that has had on so many people and has led them to work in these fields or work as a community organizer or start a nonprofit or start some type of service that helps people. It's amazing how much influence an adult or a mentor figure can have on someone's life. And I think it's important to point that out, the job that your mother did by showing you, versus telling or versus, anything else, showed you what compassion is and what compassion for other people. And as a kid, sometimes it's hard because you're like, well, mom, why can't you just hang out with me? Or why can't we just do this? But you see that she's helping other people. And as you get older, you see the effect that that has on where you live, how people view your mom or view your parents, or how people view that adult figure in their lives. And I think that's amazing. And I think more of us that are becoming adults, even though we can be older, we don't necessarily feel like we're an adult. But the more of us that are adults, we need to be looking at what are we leaving to the next generation? How
Mm.
are they viewing us? Because our work, your work, may inspire someone else to take it even further in the next 20 years. And I think that's a big portion of being someone that's saying, I want to work for my community, because you're giving a different view of what a man, a younger man, a Latino man, you're giving a different view of what you can be in society. And I think that's just amazing, how that trickles down amongst the people I've been able to talk to, and to see that with you. So I think that's awesome. I wanted to give, that shout out to your mom for really leading the way. and kind of giving you that experience to say, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to help people. I also want to ask, where did you go to college at? Where'd you go to college? Let everybody know where you went to school at.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I was born and raised in Kearney, Nebraska, right? So, um, came up through like Kearney High School, 2003. But coming up through high school, I just wanted to leave town. Like I was from that mindset of, there's nothing for me here. I got to get out, otherwise I'll stay here forever or something. And in Kearney, there's a really good university. UNK, University of Nebraska Kearney, the Lopers. Um, but to me, it was just too close. So I actually was pretty set on going to the University of Nebraska Lincoln, home of the Cornhuskers, right? So I went there, and it was kind of like a fresh start after high school. Um, and that was really my first exposure to um, kind of that world outside of the bubble that was growing up in Kearney, Nebraska. And I started to also get involved in on-campus groups, things like the Mexican American Student Association, and even a fraternity that's historically Latino-based, Sigma Lambda Beta, and all these other organizations as well that celebrated culture in some capacity in a way that was new to me, because growing up in Kearney, it was predominantly a white community, especially back then, um, and it was just it wasn't as there weren't as many opportunities, it felt like, for a young person trying to fit in, to be able to weave in culture and languages and family experiences um, in that manner. So I mean, when dad worked at a meat packing plant or mom would clean houses, some that sort of upbringing didn't always align with maybe you know the high school community, and maybe I just didn't seek it out or didn't find it, didn't connect. But in college, I was amazed by how many students that were a part of those groups, like MASA, Mexican American Student Association, had some sort of stronger like connector there. That's like, oh wow, I didn't realize this. Oh yeah, my mom did this, or oh yeah, our family's from Querétaro, Mexico, on my dad's side. So those little things that were so new to me, and it just felt like almost like a different like welcome home type thing. It just fit so well. So I just really embraced that and enjoyed my college experience. The classes were great, academics, right? It's the reason
Yeah,
you're
right.
there. But I learned so many other, I think they call them soft skills,
Yes.
by working in student groups, working on campus, taking positions of leadership, secretary, treasurer, vice president, eventually president of an organization on campus. So a lot of that was really like just helped me come out of my shell and really grow, and know how to exist in different spaces and exist with confidence, which was something that was new to me.
That's really cool. Is I love what you said. Like you found home, and it's so funny that you have to leave home to find home
Hmm.
and find a place where you feel comfortable. Because I understand my wife's a Loper. My wife's a Loper. She graduated from UNK. So was my brother-in-law. And so we have a connection to the Lopers, and we have a connection to Kearney, having lived in Kearney for a couple of years. So I definitely understand when you're saying, and I know you're trying to be very diplomatic around the topic of how it was for you and how it was or how it is for other people of color in Kearney. So I applaud you for being very diplomatic. But I can say it's hard. It's difficult because a lot of places you go, you're the only. And I know I lived in Kearney from 2007 to 2009. And even then, you still felt like you're the only, even though there are people of color, but you're put into very much a box. If you're a person of color, either you went to the school to play a sport and you're still currently playing that sport at UNK, or you've either stopped going to UNK or graduated and now you live in the community. So there's like people when they used to see me, they're like, "Oh, when'd you play? When'd you play for the Lopers?" No, I didn't play for them. Really? Why are you here? So it was like there
Mm,
was no other reason why a black guy could be in Kearney other than he was a transplant to play sports and just decided not to leave. And so
mhm,
it's very difficult sometimes to navigate that if you don't feel comfortable, you don't know how. And in I don't know if you want to agree with me or chime in, but I think in college, one of the biggest things that gets missed when you start talking about student loans and payments and just the financial aspect of it, to me, not so much the educational part. I think it's like you said, it's the soft skills. It's learning how to exist in different spaces with different people, but still keep your internal confidence that you belong in whatever space you're in. Like you don't have to assimilate yourself to be able to walk into these different rooms. You can still be you. You can be proud in your ethnicity. You can be proud in your language. You can find other groups that help you be proud. And as you leave, now you don't feel as uncomfortable. Now, when you go back to Kearney or any other place, you're like, oh, I know how to navigate this. And I think that's a very big point of college, especially going away to a school that gets missed in all the financial rhetoric that it's going around right now. Because I think that's an invaluable education that you got that really didn't have anything to do with books.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, you're just really making me think because, I know of others, either family members or friends, who never maybe made a choice to step out of the bubble that we were already in. Um, and it took them longer to really be able to find that confidence, and some may even still struggle. Um, so, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be college. I just want to give that space too, it could
Mhm.
be some sort of professional job, could be service or whatever. There's different ways, but in my particular case, it was college, and in the case of many others, that being out there and getting the education, but also interacting with so many other, not only students but administrators, faculty, professors, community members, that just opened up a whole new world. And like, I don't know, it never entered my mind that I could be somebody who could maybe facilitate a meeting, lead a meeting, be a president of an organization on campus, or put together a program or an event. I never once thought that could be me. You know, um, I, yeah, I don't know. I mean, looking back, to life before college, and kind of how I viewed the world, a lot of it was family based, what family experiences I had. Um, and I know in many families, it's not exclusive to immigrant families, but it's largely present within immigrant families. It's that, you work hard. Oftentimes, one or both parents are working long hours, so they're not always home. Um, and you kind of get that stereotype, like, oh, we're hard workers. That's what we do. We work hard
Right.
and we don't complain much. And we'll let the bosses and whoever make the decisions, but we'll just work hard because that's what we do. And it took me a while to really see, like, working hard is great, and that's a good um, trait to have, a good thing to have. But you also need that voice, and you need that balance, because many family members, friends, and people of maybe older generations, especially, at least as I observe the world, they would work themselves, and the body would start to reflect that mileage. The mind would reflect that mileage. The personal relationships would reflect them being gone working so hard. Um, that just always stuck with me. And I find myself now, even, where I'm at now, working in a nonprofit, my 10 plus years working in a nonprofit, um, I had internalized so much of, I need to work hard. I need to do this. Who cares? I'll sleep. I'll rest later. Um, and I really appreciate where I am now, because they're very like, RJ, take, if you need a day, whatever, they're very open to that. And that's something that I just wonder if my parents would have, been in situations where they could have had more care for their long-term well-being, instead of just the fighting to work, to survive and get by. Um, I just wonder, how they would be right now, because yeah, they they're reflecting the mileage of the long hours, long shifts, um, and all that. So yeah, I mean, I kind of veered a little bit there, but I was just thinking about that. The things we internalize when we're young, sometimes you don't really see or understand them until you're much older, and then you start to unravel it and be like, oh wow, that makes sense, or I didn't even think about that.
No, I think that's a great point, and it's okay. It's okay to veer because every conversation and it's organic. Like I never want anybody to feel like this is scripted, and I think where you're going and what you're talking about, I think it's important. It's like you were able to have these experiences when you went away to college. You made a decision, and whether even though it was a decision you consciously made, it was probably formed subconsciously with all the things you were internalizing. Like I got to get out of here because I can't fall into the same trap, so to speak. Like, yes, I want to work hard, but there's got to be something else. And what you said, I also want to talk about because a lot of people that may be listening feel this way too. Is you get some place or you're already at a certain place in life, and you feel like, oh, I can never run this meeting, or I could never do this, or I could never do this. And sometimes you just got to go in and do it. You have to fail fast. I heard this term one time. You
Mm.
fail fast. Just do it, fail, and learn from it instead of prolonging it by telling yourself you can't. And so you being on campus and being involved in these organizations and work study helped you learn and fail fast, because the first time anyone's run a meeting, it's not the best meeting. It's not the best meeting the first time you ever facilitate a meeting. It's not the best every time. Your first presentation in college is like never really the best. You may get a good grade, but it's not really the best. And then also understanding the avenues that are open to you and the reasons why they're open because you chose a different path, because you saw the path that kind of was laid out to you. And you're like, I don't know if I want that. It's not a disrespect of the path. It's just like, I love that you work so hard. I love that you do this. I love that we get it done. But at the same time, at what cost are we getting it done? What in our personal life is coming undone? What in our physical bodies is coming undone? And I think that I think not the podcast, the pandemic has opened that wound larger for the world to see. And I say wound because I say that in communities of color, families of color, immigrant families. I do think it's a little bit of a wound where you just put your head down, you don't make trouble. Everybody's dad or mom is like, don't rock the boat. That's the favorite saying growing up. Don't rock the boat. Don't make waves. Just do what you got to
Yeah.
do and come home. And I think we're seeing now a transition because the younger generation is understanding, no, we don't have to do this. I don't have to kill myself and go 90 hours a week, for free just to make you feel happy. I can go 60 hours a week for myself and I can feel happy and I can feel fulfilled and I can show a different path. So I think, like you said, not even having to go to college, but just understanding we can navigate different spaces and do things differently and have different experiences. And I think it is from that subconscious, like, I don't know if I want to break my back like this,
Mm.
and which sometimes can be misconstrued as being lazy. Wow, this younger generation is lazy. They don't want to do anything. They want to go to school for free. But it's like,
Mm.
work smarter, not harder.
Mm.
So I like where you went with that because that makes a difference. Not feeling like you see yourself in a certain position, but then also not feeling like you want to be stuck in what's laid out easy for you. And it's hard to
Mm.
leave home. It is hard as hell to leave home
Mm.
and navigate a new surrounding and say, I'm going to do something completely different from my family.
Mhm.
So kudos to you and where that has brung you now.
Oh, thank you, thank you. And you know, that kind of reminds me too. I mean, like, I appreciate the kudos, and I'll also share that it's one of the toughest things for me to allow myself to accept. You know, I'm quick to like, oh, yeah, I'd be quick to, and I even naturally thought it, give kudos right back to you, which rightfully so, and I love the work that you and Gladys are doing. Um, but kind of to one of the things you said earlier, it is challenging for me to be able to exist in a place where I do receive, kudos. And it kind of hit me too this past month. Uh, there was a conference for like 11th and 12th graders or high school students, I guess. So I got to see some different statewide folks that I'd, either worked with or run into in the past, and great to catch up with them. But there was this moment where like we were in a group and um, someone's like, "Oh yeah, I first met RJ when he helped me with my FAFSA, and we had a great conversation, and a lot of what he said was one of the reasons why I went to college. And then someone else there said, "Oh yeah, well RJ did my FAFSA too," and "Oh yeah, you did. RJ helped me too." And I don't know, that just was it was challenging, but it wasn't. It also made me feel very good and proud, and like I know I wasn't like I don't dare claim like being the main reason why they did such a thing, but to be able to be a part of that, to be able to be a support in that time period in their lives, just was really good. And then as I was driving home after the conference, I was kind of thinking about that. I'm like, wow, I need to really challenge myself to just exist in, you know, receiving some of the positive responses, as opposed to my natural inclination, which would be to redirect that to something else. So,
No, I think it's good. My wife and I, Gladys, we have this conversation a lot too. Is I think, and it's from that upbringing. And I'm not a child of immigrants, but just being, an African American man and growing up in, New York City, and you just got to work, you got to hustle, you got to navigate. You don't understand how to take compliments well. It feels weird to us because your parents don't really give you the most compliment. Like, if your parents are like my parents, you really didn't get a lot of compliments, at least not to your face. They would tell other people and not you. So you grow up with not knowing how to deal with positive praise. You know how to do it. Work harder, get it done. You're not going fast enough. Stop being lazy. We grow up with that, but we don't grow up with just for no reason. You know what, man? You're awesome and you're just doing a great job and I love you. Like, we don't grow up with that.
mm,
And so when we get older, it's ingrained. It's like second nature to just be like, oh no, it's normal. It's what I do. No worries. But hey, man, you're out here doing the same thing, because we just don't know how to do it. It really feels awkward to a lot of us in that space, because it's not what you were, it's not a learned response. It's not a learned thing. And it takes us a long time to process that. And it can really cause issues, because you can just, because then it can go to the other way where you're constantly deflecting. And then some people just take the compliment. Like, just take the compliment. Like, why you don't have to give me a compliment, or you don't have to just take the compliment, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, thank you. So no, it I think, and we touched on something. I think we're in a nice vein of this in terms of growing up certain ways and
mm,
having a certain type of lifestyle,
mm,
because it takes years to impact. So if you're listening out there and you're younger, you're in like the 17, 18, 19 range. I'm 41, RJ's 37. It takes a long time to unpack the first portion of your life. So if you don't have it figured out, it's okay. If you
mhm,
don't know how to deal with certain things, it's okay. Because I think when you're 28 and over, you're just starting to figure out how to unpack everything that happened from 26 down. And you're
mhm,
like, okay, how does this affect me? Why do I do this? Why am I like this? And a lot of it has to do with our experience, and a lot of it
Mhm.
has to do with what we go through culturally. So yeah,
Mm.
I think that's really like kind of deep in
Mm.
terms of we're always constantly finding ourselves, and we're always constantly understanding that something played a part in how we digest stuff in, like, something in the past plays a part in why we digest stuff in the future. So
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely difficult because I feel like that sometimes too. It's hard for me to take a compliment. I'm just like, yeah,
Mhm.
like I don't know what to say.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because, everybody's journey is different. Like, there's maybe little elements you can take from someone else's journey and take something from that, but your journey is your own. Um, but at this stage in my life, I'm also realizing that a lot of folks who I used to view like, oh, that's a successful person, they largely, I've seen many signs and evidence of, they too don't have everything figured out. They too make mistakes. They too need to learn and grow. Um, and sometimes they'll even know they need to learn and grow, right? So that's something that kind of helped me demystify, you know, and at least calm some of the pressures. Um, because again, it could be a pressure of maybe there's not a lot of money and the finances at home are not stable, and maybe you as a young person has a responsibility to even your parents. It could be something with the, in the realm of health. Maybe you or somebody you love is going through a health battle. A lot of different stressors in life. But one thing that I've learned is that, we each have our own journey, but we each are also continually in need of learning and growing and sharpening skills, gaining new skills, because we don't all have it figured out. Like, that was one of the most liberating things to me that I learned in my journey, is that you can fail. Be smart, and have different ways of recovering and bouncing back from that failure, but failure will get you that step closer to figuring out what your successful solution is going to be. Whether it be internally, what do you want to do with your life? What kind of life do you want to build? Whether it be externally, what kinds of relationships do you want to have in your life? What kind of people do you want to allow in? Um, it's a constant, like, just a constant learning, and that, I think, never is going to end. Like, yeah.
Nor it shouldn't. I want to backtrack. I like backtracking
Mm-hmm.
because we get on so many good topics, and you discuss journey, and your journey never really ends, and you're constantly moving forward. You talked about leaving Kearney, Nebraska, going to Lincoln, Nebraska for college, and so you're all the experiences you had in Lincoln. What was your like? What was it like your journey in Lincoln? More so when your time in college is coming to end, because I think when you're in school, your first couple years, you're like, yeah, all you think about is your first couple years. And then when you're about to graduate, the clock is like, wait, what? I gotta I gotta leave the dorm. I gotta leave free cable, huh? And then so what was that journey like when you're getting ready to leave Lincoln, UNL, University of Lincoln, Nebraska, when you're ready to leave there and you're ready to step into the professional realm? Take us through that journey.
Mm. Yeah, that, for me, was a very, kind of a lot of pain and failing and stumbling, and also learning and growing came from that. Because in my case, as I was getting close to the end of college, that was kind of the end of all the connect the dots that I had previously in my life. You go to school, you go to high school, you go to college, keep your grades up and all that. But the next dot, on my trajectory here, um, was not on the paper yet. It just wasn't drawn out. Um, so it was that not knowing what the next step was. And in retrospect, I should have listened to other voices around me to try to plan that next step so I had a smooth transition after I graduated. But personal things in life, you know, falling in love and that sort of stuff, when you're young and you know, um, just blurred my vision of what I wanted to do. So I graduated. I actually graduated summer of 2008 in a hurry because I wasn't planning to. I was planning to still continue in the fall of 2008. But I got a letter saying I was getting close to my limit on financial aid. So I didn't know at the time that was simply a warning. I thought it was like, oh no, I got to hurry up and graduate. So I talked to my advisor and we mapped it out and I was able to graduate summer 2008. A lot of things were happening nationally as well, 2008, and like the recession and everything. But in my case, I didn't know what to do, so I went back home to Kearney. And it's funny. I said my first professional job was at Education Quest, right, a nonprofit, but that didn't happen until a couple of years after I had graduated from college. And my first, I guess, job after college was working at a turkey plant. That's where my dad worked at a small town next to Kearney, and so that was such an eye-opening experience. To be honest, I only lasted I think 3 days because it was rough. I mean, the lines and the smells and the heat and then the cold, and my body was worn down, and I was a young person, right? I'm mid 20s, not even mid 20s, but I was exhausted. We're up super early to go to work. By the time you get home, it's already getting dark, and then you get up and do the same thing again 6 days a week. So that really was tough for me to try that out because I wanted some money to just needed some money quickly, and so that didn't pan out. I did a couple temp jobs here and there in Kearney, but just a lot of disillusionment, I guess. I'm like, did I hit my ceiling already? Am I done? What am I doing with my degree? My degree was in film and in Spanish.
Okay.
So I did get involved locally, just on like some small projects, but not paying and not, didn't really materialize into a whole lot of opportunities. Um, but I did get a job at a factory in Kearney to try to again get some money under me because student loan payments were due, and I helped out here and there from my family.
Right. That
Helped
pressure
help
you
my
talked about.
yeah,
I was saying
that
that you
that
feel that
pressure.
start feeling that pressure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I worked for about a good year or so, and I saved up enough money because I wanted to move to LA. You work at, filmmaking and screenwriting is one of the things I enjoy doing outside of the community work. Um, so I saved up and I went to LA, um, and again ran out of money. That seemed to be a recurring thing in my life.
I know that's a thing. Like, you gotta pay money for stuff. Sucks.
Yeah. Um, so I had to, drive back, yeah, to Nebraska from LA in my 1991 Buick Century. Great car. That's my favorite car I've ever had so far. Um,
Probably was good on gas mileage.
yeah, it was excellent. So I came back and so I happened to see Education Quest was hiring at the time. And with my previous work as a student in the admissions world and also other on campus jobs, that made me a strong contender. So I went and it's funny because I didn't have enough money and enough gas in the tank to drive to Lincoln from Kearney.
Okay.
But I had stopped at a gas station and put in some money, and I ended up with $1 getting a scratch ticket. It's whatever, right? I was grasping for straws here,
Hey,
and
this is what great screenplays are made of. Because I
that's
feel like I
right,
know where this is going.
good bit.
So the life of RJ, this is a good turning point here.
So I got the scratch ticket, and I scratched it, and I won $40. That was enough to fill up my gas tank and not be stressed to drive to Lincoln. Um, and then did the interview, drove back home, and they eventually followed up and wanted to offer me the position. So it's very amazing how things sometimes fall into place.
That is a, I don't want to say hallmark or a lifetime. That's very award winning. No, it's serious. Like we're kind of making light of it. But I don't want to think that I don't respect that, because you feel that had to been like a point of time when you're like nothing's going right. And like you feel like you're at the low, and you take a flyer, you scratch, you get $40, and you're like, I can drive to this interview, and then you get the job. And like you said, the people write screenplays about that. That's what
Mm,
gets shown in movies. Those are that life-changing moments that lead to bigger and better things. And not saying the podcast is the bigger and better thing, but here you are talking about your work in the community, talking about all these things that led up to you being able to help others with all of these experiences. I mean, how much knowledge can you impart to, when you were working at Education Quest, to young high school kids going to college to be like, yeah, hey, I went to LA to figure things out, or I worked here and figure things out. You definitely don't want to work at a turkey plant. So don't go to school and mess up, because you're gonna have to make money. And there's all not always a lot of opportunities out there to make money. And there are some things that are backbreaking. And if that's not what you want to do, then we need to focus. And there's a great experiences to draw on, which is why when you were at that conference, those kids stood up and was like, yeah, RJ helped me do this, and RJ helped me do this. Because you had those experiences to lean on, to show them, to say, hey, I've done this. So trust me on the path I'm trying to put you on, because it's going to be a good one. So that's awesome. So the Hollywood movie ends, you get the job, you're at Education Quest,
mm.
and tell us about tell me about Education Quest.
Yeah, you know, it's a private nonprofit. The mission is to help Nebraskans get access to higher education, so whatever form that might be, community college or university or trade school, whatever. Um, so it's statewide, different offices: Lincoln, Omaha, Kearney, and Scottsbluff, and everything is free. So nothing's being sold. You don't have to subscribe, pay money to get any of the services. Um, and a lot of strong partnerships with high schools. So you work in the schools with the students. So that was a really good thing that I valued. Thinking about that when I started it there, I'll never forget the day that was my first day. And again, I was still living in Kearney, so I drove that morning to be at work by like 8:30, and then they initially you talk to HR and everything, and they talk about benefits and 401k, and I had no idea really what that was, but I went ahead and nodded my head and signed up and stuff. Um, and then I got to spend time with my team, my new team, and they showed me around in my office, and I had my own office. I had a desk, I had a little name, thing that said Romulo Vega. Um, I had a plant, I had a window, and I just needed to take like 5 minutes, like after they gave me the tour. I just sat in silence in that office because at that moment, and I'll never forget, at that moment, I thought of my mom, and I thought of the times she would take me as a little kid to go clean houses. And I didn't know any better. I just thought it was fun. I thought of the times that we would work in the bean fields in central Nebraska. Again, I'd be little toddler, whatever, little guy. But I thought it was normal. I thought of my mom's working holidays, long hours. She worked overnights. I thought of her not eating, going without eating many occasions. And all of that, the life that she lived and the life she provided for us, was so that I could sit in this office and not have to work in the way that she worked. I could have more voice and control over my life and the decisions being made, as opposed to just being told what to do, being told to clean this or do that, you know. So at that moment, I sat in silence, and that's when it all clicked. I understood why she didn't really know about like steps to guide me to college. She didn't really know. She would stopped going to school when she was 15, I believe. Out of necessity, she had to help, you know, my grandparents and the family at the time financially. So she went to work right away since she was 15. Um, so she never got that chance to go down that path. Um, it clicked for me though why she would always be very strict and say, "You're going to college. You're not going to be doing what I'm doing. I don't want to see you breaking your back doing this kind of work. And I don't care what you do, just go to college." That's when it clicked for me, and that's a moment I'll never forget. And even going around talking to students, talking to groups, parents, and even now talking to community members in general, I feel like every time I'm on a stage or I talking to a group, she's there with me. Because without her, I don't know if any of that would have even happened. You know, um, so I don't know. That's kind of was a very impactful moment in my life, and um, I know other parents and family members and older siblings and other mentors, have that same impact on so many of us in different ways. Um, just definitely, there's a lot of strength to be taken from those moments.
Man, that is a powerful story. Thank you for sharing that, because I'm pretty sure that's going to resonate with someone else, or just the fact that it's going to allow someone else to be empowered by your story. Um, because it is. I mean, just starting from saying, I gotta come back from LA. You feel like you didn't make it, or maybe felt like it's a fail, like, I wish it didn't work. And you're on your last dollar, you win 40, which allows you to get the interview, which I think is awesome. Like, I'm gonna repeat that because that's that's pretty cool. You win $40 and it allows you to drive to this interview, and you interview well, you get the position, and you have to sit in silence because you're in an office, something that other people may have taken for granted. Oh, here's my office, or can I put this in there? Cause and you're like, man, I got a plant, I got a name tag. My name is on the door, and things
Mm-hmm.
like that I think other people take for granted in their journey are, I think, what separates certain people, is because certain people would have taken that for granted, and you were able to sit and genuinely reflect and say, this is why my mom did what she did. And that's a beautiful moment that you were able to encapsulate in your own life, and then a beautiful moment that you're able to share on this podcast with myself and the listeners. So I just really want to say thank you. I don't have too much to add to that other than thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, and especially if there's any younger listeners, um, definitely encourage you all to give to those who have chosen to give to you. Um, make them feel special. I mean, whether it's a parent or a mentor or somebody, um, I don't know, just doing little things to make them feel good. At least for me, has made me feel like very fulfilled. Um, One of the greatest, I guess, feelings in the world was to be able to take my mom on certain vacations, places she never could go. You know, like Walt Disney World, or we went to Playa del Carmen in Mexico, next to Cancun. So those sorts of experiences that she had never even thought of doing before, to be able to give her that sort of experience, it was just a very magical feeling as well. So even if it's a thank you note or something, box of chocolates or something for somebody who's impacted your life, just think about what you can do to make them feel special.
You heard it here. So Romulo wants a lot of box of chocolates. So we should send those into the show, and we'll pass those on to RJ. As we're winding down, and we've gone through the journey of Education Quest, and can you let people know where you currently are? Because I know you're a community organizer and you're working with Get Out the Vote, but where are you currently? What's the nonprofit you're currently working for now?
Yeah, I currently work for Nebraska Appleseed. So we do statewide work, areas of, well, I'm a part of the Immigrants and Communities program. So a lot of the work I do is focused on serving, immigrant families and rural communities and connecting um, community members to either information, resources, or just helping have some of those community conversations, whether it be voting, worker safety, whether it be advocating for um, positive immigration laws to your congressional representatives, those sorts of things. Um, just helping community members get the tools they need to try to move things forward.
Awesome. Awesome. And it seems like a great place and a great fit for you. And I'm thankful for the words of saying to somebody like what you just said before, in terms of making sure if someone's had a positive impact, and let them know, give them a card, tell them face to face. That's just
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And then before we head out, I've got like two questions.
Okay.
One, one is it's gonna be completely somewhat off topic. What is your Give me your top 5 movies. It's hard because
Ooh.
I'm a movie person and I could
Mm-hmm.
give you 30, but just if the quickest off the top of your head, what do you think your top 5 movies?
Yeah,
I know it's a
that's
hard one.
interesting.
I'm giving you a hard one.
I could probably rewatch a couple different movies like nonstop. Um, I really liked. I do like the Kill Bill movies. Um, they're just fun, and Pulp Fiction. So both Tarantino
Yes.
movies. I really love The Empire Strikes Back. I just That's my favorite probably of the Star Wars movies. But I love pretty much anything Star Wars. Um, the first Pirates of the Caribbean was really fun at that time.
It was
Like,
good when it first came out. It was.
yeah, it's what, 2003 or whatever. Just a
Yeah.
fun little movie that probably shouldn't have worked, but it worked really well. Um, so yeah, I mean that, and gosh, I don't know. There's just so many. That's a tough one.
There's a lot. It's hard. I have a funny story about Pirates of the Caribbean though. So Pirates of the Caribbean came out the same time as Bad Boys 2. And I
Mm.
was still in college. So don't fault me for this, people who are like, "Oh, I can't believe you did that." So we brought tickets to Pirates. So it's like, so purposely, and this is back in the day when you had to look in the newspaper for times of when your movie started, or call the theater. Couldn't just look it up on your phone. So I found out the times of Pirates of the Caribbean and Bad Boys 2. And so that way, when Pirates of the Caribbean ended, Bad Boys 2 would be started. And I knew it was gonna be packed because it was like those two movies are getting hyped up for everything. So we brought a ticket for Pirates of the Caribbean, and it was packed full. And then as it was letting out, um, Bad Boys 2 happened to be on the same side of the theater, and it was packed, and everybody was going in. So I just kind of happened to follow the crowd to Bad Boys 2, and I found a seat, and I was able to watch Bad Boys 2, and I think I missed like maybe the first couple coming attractions, but yeah, I got to see Pirates of the Caribbean the day it opened, and Bad Boys 2 the day it opened. So that's my Pirates of the Caribbean story right there. So don't fault me. Yes, I snuck into a
Yes.
movie. I watched it unpaid. They got me later when I had to pay for whatever cable box I was streaming in 2008
Mm.
when I was watching it. So
Hmm.
whatever satellite TV dish, I paid it back anyway.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. Don't do that at home, kids.
No. And my last thing, where I don't want to give your personal information out,
Mhm.
but if people wanted to either find a way to get in touch with Nebraska Appleseed or the program that you work for or work within, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if it's something, like community work and that sort of stuff, definitely feel free to email me, and I can share my email address with you, Chris, afterwards. But I'll say it out loud too. It's just rvega at neappleseed.org, and I'd love to hear from you. Um, and then, if it's more just, whether it be something in the film related or something different matter, I'm on social media and stuff. We can connect in that manner.
Well, awesome, perfect. If you want to get in touch with RJ, send him an email. We have it here on the podcast. We'll put it in the description as well. So send RJ an email if you want to get in touch. Hopefully that means you've listened to the whole podcast. So I appreciate you and thank you very much. And again, I am your host, Chris Cox of the Wild Ones podcast. And RJ is definitely someone who is working in love daily. We appreciate you being on the show. And as always, everybody, have a wonderful day, evening, night, whenever you're listening, and peace.